Hey guys, this is Dave with Gazaudio, and I have the Onyx Alpha XL1 portable USB DAC, and apparently Channeling has now partnered with Onyx, and this is one of their new products. Now, of course, we know Channeling has been in the portable audio game for a while, and their UA5, UA3 were actually two of my top USB dongles at one point. But I don't really know much about Onyx, although I did visit their website, and from what I've gathered, much of their gear is pretty high end. And I'm talking thousands of dollars, but the Alpha XL1 is only $109. So that is kind of interesting. In any case, I've done lots of testing and comparing the XL1 to some of my other dongles in this price range. And I think I have a pretty good idea of where it lands in terms of its general performance and also where it stacks up or how it stacks up to some of the more recent competition. And I think you're going to be surprised. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. So this is everything that is included in the box. We have the Alpha XL1, a short Type-C USB cable, and then a USB adapter. There is also a case that you can get, but the case is sold separately. Now again, this is priced at $109, and I have to say, for this price range, it's quite nice, and the build seems to be quite robust also. And it's feature packed for this price point as well. But in regards to the black and gold design language, it does strike me as having a more high-end look. And what's cool is this aesthetic is actually pretty consistent throughout their entire product lineup. But it doesn't just look great, the build is also very, very solid. And even more importantly, the actual UI and functionality seem to be very well thought through. And from the very beginning, I found it to be very user-friendly, very functional, and just easy to use. And I will talk more about that, but let's go over the internals very quickly, and then we'll circle back to that in a minute. So the Cirrus Logic CS43198 seems to be a pretty popular DAC chip these days, and it's used in devices like the Afu Snowy Night, Ayun Yuki, Colorfly CDA M2, FIO KA5, Q11, Moonrover 2 Ti, all of which I do currently own. Point being, it's a widely used and fairly capable DAC chip, and the Alpha XL1 has two of them, and they are paired with an SGM8262 amp chip. So that's a pretty solid combination, but what really kind of intrigued me was its power output, because it's capable of delivering 4 volts RMS and 500 milliwatts at 32 ohms out of the 4.4 output, which is great, especially if you own full-size headphones. Now, the power output of the 3.5 isn't quite as impressive. It does give you 180 milliwatts at 32 ohms, but that's still enough to drive most full-size headphones to decent volume levels, and of course, it's more than enough for IEMs. And then going back to the UI and its general functionality, you can see here that the Alpha XL1 has both a physical volume rocker and a physical play pause button, and both of these are multifunctional. The play pause button also functions as a selector button, and then the volume rocker allows you to scroll through the built-in menu, and then the menu is viewable on the front display. As far as menu options, it gives you access to basically everything you might expect, like gain controls, 5 different filters, brightness settings, USB modes, and some other basic settings. But what's cool is that the Alpha XL1 is also compatible with the Edit Music Player application, which of course can play any of your phone or DAP's onboard music files, but it also gives you access and control of the Alpha XL1's built-in menu. So again, this device is pretty feature-packed for this price range. Okay, let's move on to the sound. So like I normally do, I tested the Alpha XL1 with a pretty wide variety of IEMs and headphones that kind of spanned the budget price range. And then I also compared the Alpha XL1 with not only the dongles within the $100 price range, but also some more expensive dongles as well. And then even some desktop stuff. So we'll talk about my impressions with IEMs first, and then we'll talk about drivability and how well the Alpha XL1 worked with full-size headphones. So of course, one of the first things I try and determine is if a device is transparent and to what degree, if any, does that device affect or color the sound. And I have to say, I was very impressed by the Alpha XL1, especially considering, again, it's only $109. It's not perfectly linear. I would say it does lean maybe warm as opposed to analytical. However, I do still feel like it strikes a pretty good balance between the two, giving me an overall natural presentation, but also still delivering pretty impressive amounts of detail as well. And if we break things down a little further, we'll start with the bass. Bass is extended, it's dynamic and punchy. It also has good bass speed and texture. Mids sound natural. They do retain nice amounts of detail. However, they are maybe a little weightier in their presentation. The treble presentation is also very natural sounding. And while I would say it's maybe a little smoother in its overall presentation, I don't feel like it's lacking that much in terms of detail or even micro nuances, again, at least for this price point. And then of course, another thing I test for is background noise, and my go-to set for that is my 2020 Andromedas, because if there is even a hint of noise, they will pick it up. And you know what? The Alpha XL1 performed very, very well. I did not hear even the slightest bit of background noise in high or low gain. So that basically sums up my experience with the XL1 using IEMs. So what about drivability and how well does the Alpha XL1 work with full-size headphones? Well, if you take everything I said about the Alpha XL1 as far as its overall sound presentation with IEMs, that is basically also applicable to full-size headphones. So its presentation is mostly linear, but it does lean a little warm. It sounds natural. It has pretty decent amounts of detail, and its general sound performance is what I would consider to be very, very competitive. And as far as power output, it's one of the most powerful dongles out there, I think, other than the K17. But despite that impressive amounts of power output, I did actually notice the Alpha XL1 struggling just a little bit in certain areas with full-size headphones. So let's go ahead and talk about that. So as I had mentioned, the 3.5 output only puts out 180 milliwatts at 32 ohms, which is plenty for IEMs, but I did notice it struggling a little bit with headphones. Not that I couldn't reach good volume levels, that wasn't really an issue, especially with my easier to drive headphones, but I could tell that it would start to struggle with dynamics, detail levels, and just the general sound quality when I would push it at higher volumes. But of course, that's no surprise, and that's pretty much the case with almost any dongle I have when comparing the sound performance out of 3.5 outputs. And the reality is you just really aren't going to be able to drive very many full-size headphones to their max potential using the 3.5 output of a dongle style DAC of any kind, which is why it's great if the device also includes a more powerful 4.4 balanced output. And this does offer that. Again, that power output jumps up to 500 milliwatts from 180 milliwatts. But as importantly, the voltage jumps up from 2.4 volts RMS to 4 volts RMS. And both of those combined, that high power output combined with that voltage output, really do make a significant difference in sound performance when it comes to full-size headphones. As a matter of fact, the XL1 did a very, very good job pushing all of my headphones from my entry-level stuff all the way up to even my higher-end stuff. And while I don't really have anything that's super hard to drive, I do have the 350 ohm FT3s, 300 ohm Sivga SV023s, and then I also have the LCD 32023s and the Aria Stealths. And while some of those sets don't necessarily require a lot of power to push them to decent volume levels, my higher end sets definitely do like power. And when I pair them with some of my more powerful reference amps, there is undoubtedly a significant improvement in overall performance, especially when compared with the Alpha XL1 using the 4.4 balanced output. But when I compared the XL1 to all of my other dongle style DACs, its performance is basically on par with some of the best dongles I own. My top performer up to this point with full-size headphones being the KA17, which also has a pretty impressive amount of power output, but it's also just a very capable dongle in terms of dynamics, transients, transparency, staging. It has low noise, it's energy efficient, but I have to say that Alpha XL1 is really giving the KA17 a run for its money, and it's also quite a bit cheaper. So the XL1 is, needless to say, an impressive device. And then one more thing about the KA17, I have never owned or heard a dongle perform the way the KA17 does with full-size headphones until this one. Again, it outperforms every dongle I own or have owned at the $100 price point, including the Snowy Night, KA3, the Heidi's XO, but also even some more expensive dongles like the Muse M3 and M4, Colorfly CDA M2, Fio K5, Aiyun Yuki, and more. And right now, my top two dongles are the KA17 for full-size headphones, and then the Hibi FC6 for IEMs, and then the Moon River 2 Ti follows closely behind those. And just to remind you, the FC6 is priced at $299. The Moon River 2 Ti is priced at $189. The KA17 is $150. So the Alpha XL1 is by far the least expensive of the bunch. And you know what? All of my higher end headphones perform way better with the Alpha XL1 than they do with the FC6, because of course the FC6 doesn't come anywhere close in terms of power and voltage outputs. So that basically leaves the Moon River 2 Ti and KA17. And I will just say I do prefer the Alpha XL1 over the Moon River 2 Ti with both IEMs and headphones. But it gets a little trickier with the KA17 because there are things I do feel like the KA17 does a little better on the technical side of things, like transients and maybe dynamics. But then when I listen to the Alpha XL1, it still comes very close to the technical performance of the KA17, but it also gives me a little more of a natural tonality, and it leans a little less clinical in its overall presentation. So I guess the thing is, there are unique characteristics about both devices that I find equally appealing, and I could be perfectly happy with either one. But hold on a second, because there's still pricing to take into consideration, because the Alpha XL1, again, only cost $109 compared to the KA17's $150 price tag. So in terms of outright value, the XL1 is without a doubt the better value between the two, because I can get equal listening enjoyment for much less money. But that also means the Onyx Alpha XL1 is now my number one top dongle value pick. So I guess it goes without saying, the Alpha XL1 absolutely gets my top recommendation. This thing performs way above its price point and is simply an exceptional value in my opinion. So that concludes my review of the Onyx Alpha XL1. If you are new to the Gazaudio channel and you like our videos, please take a second and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to go a step further, you can also support us through our Patreon. I'll be sure and leave a link in the description. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this review. Please like this video. Please share this video. I hope you guys have an awesome day.